tell a lot about a person by the company that they keep. When it comes to Canada's role on the world stage, the Trudeau government has been quietly siding with the world's worst tyrants and human rights abusers. A new report from the independent watchdog group UN Watch issued a scathing report on Canada's voting record at the United Nations. Here's a quote from that report. Canada broke with the free world and joined Syria, Iran, and North Korea by voting no on 8 separate measures that sought to hold Cuba accountable for widespread human rights violations. On issues of basic rights and freedoms, including freedom of expression, workers' rights, and political freedoms, Canada has failed to join other Western liberal democracies in condemning Cuba. Instead, our diplomats have sided with the oppressive communist regime. Trudeau's representatives at the United Nations even failed to join a motion calling for gender equality in Cuba. Look, when the world's top male feminist shies away from the opportunity to lecture others about gender, you know something's not right. And it isn't just at the UN that the Trudeau government has shamelessly ignored abuse and sided with Cuba. Over the past year and a half, mysterious sonic attacks have been waged against Canadian and American diplomats and their families living in Havana. This has left many with brain injuries and symptoms like gushing nosebleeds, intense nausea, and incapacitating headaches. Both countries have recalled their diplomatic staff, but while the US has loudly and openly been investigating these attacks and condemning Cuba, Canada has remained silent. The victims recently spoke out about their treatment in a Globe and Mail report, revealing that the Trudeau government failed to acknowledge their concerns or protect their safety. Here's a quote from one of the Canadian diplomats involved in all this. "We did not expect to be abandoned or more precisely sacrificed, but that's how we're feeling now." According to the Globe report, several diplomats agreed that the Trudeau government, quote, considers it strategically important to maintain a comparatively close relationship with Cuba's communist regime for trade and political reasons, unquote. Trade? Cuba is a poor country with a planned socialist economy. Most Cuban businesses are owned and operated by the communist government or its rogue military. Canadians who visit Cuba may not realize it, but Cuba's hotel industry is run almost entirely to the benefit of the Cuban military. That means that your tourism dollars are going towards guns and bullets used to persecute political prisoners and kill innocent people. And when it comes to Canada's trade partners, Cuba is insignificant. They rank 47th on the list of countries importing Canadian products. So why is Canada going out of its way to befriend this military dictatorship? Well, according to the anonymous diplomat that was interviewed in that Globe and Mail story, the Trudeau government doesn't want to upset Cuba. Why? Here's a quote. Because of Canada's bid for a UN Security Council seat. Well, there you go. In other words, the Trudeau government is so desperate to be part of this UN in crowd, a group of corrupt, elitist, power-hungry bureaucrats, that it's willing to sacrifice on our core Canadian principles. When the ruthless dictator Fidel Castro finally died in 2016, most Cubans celebrated. I know because I was reporting from Little Havana in Miami, Florida that day. And there were thousands of Cubans gathered in the streets. They were dancing, singing, and showing their support for freedom and reform in Cuba. The tyrant who had ruthlessly killed innocent people, broken up families, and destroyed a country was finally dead, and the Cuban people were celebrating. Well, that same day, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau issued an appalling and tone-deaf statement praising Fidel Castro, calling him a larger-than-life leader, and spreading propaganda about his record as Cuba's long-standing and much-hated dictator. Trudeau's strange affinity for Cuba and his willingness to turn a blind eye to Cuba's repeated belligerence is a disgrace to all Canadians. For the True North Initiative, I'm Candice Malcolm.